is a deck that has just been tearing up Magic Online.
Yeah,
People have just
it's the hot new thing, for sure.
There's been 5-0ing all of the leagues, basically. We didn't see a huge showing for the deck last weekend. There was a 9th place deck, but I'm excited to see it play.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it play also. It's basically another one of these big mana decks. It's not exactly the same as Tron or Amulet, but it's one of the decks that really tries to abuse lands that produce multiple mana sources and really ramps up.
Absolutely. So it looks like Cedric led on a Flooded Strand and passed. AJ just went Urborg into Relic of Progenitus and passed back. Cedric's going to fetch a Steam Vents here and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I really like the splash damage that this Black-White Eldrazi deck is going to gain off of having main deck Relic of Progenitus. It's going to fuel his processors as we get later on into the game, Wasteland Stranger, Oblivion Sower, to get some lands, Blight Herder. But it also just hurts decks with Snapcaster Mage, Tarmogoyf, Living End. Just a great card.
Yeah, one other thing I really like about it too is the Tron deck usually played the same Relic of Progenitus, and a lot of the reason for that was it just wanted some disruption, and it didn't have a lot to do on the opening turns of the game. A lot of times with these big mana decks, they sacrifice having board impact on the opening turns so that they can have big payouts later on in the game. And this deck has a similar sort of thing going on. I mean, we have a Nihil Spellbomb, Relic of Progenitus, neither of which really impact the board and are just minor disruption sources on opponents' graveyards. But because of the processor mechanic, AJ Lekan is going to be able to actually make use of those exile effects in a way that the other ramp decks haven't been able to.
Absolutely. So we've got AJ on his second turn. He's just going to play an Eldrazi Temple, cast the Nil Spellbomb, and then pass the turn to Cedric, who started off with a Serum Visions. This is actually like the best start that this Black-White Eldrazi deck could possibly have with the Urborg into Eldrazi Temple. The reason being, Urborg is going to allow Iovogen to tap for mana, and since it reduces the cost of his Eldrazi by 2, it's essentially going to be a Mishra's Workshop for his Eldrazi. He can tap for mana, get 2 free mana from the negative effect, and then be able to cast these Eldrazi really cheap, and they're going to be extremely powerful.
Yeah, the opening turns for both of these decks are actually ones where they're mostly setting up. You saw Cedric play Serum Visions. He's basically going to be looking to get into a Pestermite or Deceiver Exarch, end of turn, untap, play Splinter Twin. He's got to be a little careful about how he can do that because AJ has Path to Exiles, so that'll be a little tricky.
Yeah. Also, it looks like AJ does have the pretty standard 1 Slaughter Pact in his main.
Very good card against Blue-Red Twin.
Looks like he doesn't have any more in his sideboard. But yeah, being able to have that 0 mana removal spell against these twin decks is pretty invaluable.
Absolutely.
Looks like we've got Cedric. He just played a Sulphur Falls. Looks like he cycled a Twisted Image on AJ's end step. And now this is where we get into the point of the game where Cedric is going to need to put together a combo fairly quickly. The majority of the permission that these Blue-Red Twin decks play are remand, and those cards are real bad against Oblivion Sower, and we're almost to that point of the game for AJ.
Yeah, you do not want them to just cast it again, for sure. Especially because with the Oblivion Sower, you may get enough mana to literally just cast it again.
Now, it looked like on AJ's previous turn, he started to cast a Lingering Souls out of his hand and then realized he didn't have any white mana, then went back to the Wasteland Strangler.
And that is actually a really big deal because without white mana, AJ cannot cast Path to Exile. So right now, if Cedric is trying to set up the combo, it's kind of a green light. I mean, he's got 1 Slaughter Pact to play around, but he probably doesn't know that his opponent has 1 Slaughter Pact. He's just probably thinking about Path to Exile. So...
Yep, and so it looks like Cedric Serum Visioned. He's going to play a Flooded Strand and pass the turn. AJ is going to crack his Relic of Progenitus on the end step to draw a card. It looks like all graveyards need to be exiled, so that's what the judge is going to be correcting. But it seems like AJ is just kind of short on lands. He's trying to draw into some mana.
Sounds like he's just trying to draw and hit his next land. Oh, he's got a Plains and some other lands in his hand. I see a Godless Shrine also. So actually, it seems like he's kind of all set. All systems go for AJ.
So there's the Lingering Souls. But it doesn't look like he has his Slaughter Pact in hand. So if he happens to get comboed, so it looks like Cedric is just going to remand it, get a little bit of value. I really like being able to remand Lingering Souls on the back end, but I think he wants to try and give himself some time here.
Yeah, I think Cedric is also digging for some more action.
All right, so Cedric's going to take a draw. Looks like he picked up a Lightning Bolt, which is going to help if he happens to get some sort of clock on the battlefield. But as of now, he's just kind of spinning his wheels.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's not too uncommon to see with a combo deck of any kind. Blue-Red Twin is no exception. Basically, you'll see them set up, set up, set up, set up. And a lot of times they'll be falling behind on the board in the meantime, but they're really just trying to sculpt a scenario where they can combo off, because it doesn't matter what life total you're at or how far behind you are on the board. If you combo off, you just win the game. So he kind of has the luxury to spin his wheels a little bit. It's really, I think, AJ that needs to get on the board and start doing something in a big way.
So it looks like Cedric is going to be Pestermiting the plains in AJ's upkeep. Now he is able to tap that Flooded Strand for black mana because there is an Urborg on the battlefield, so he's preserving his life total a little bit. Since that Wasteland Strangler is putting a little bit of pressure on Cedric. Now it is a 3-2, so if he wanted to block it, he could, but he is just going to cash in a Lightning Bolt and get rid of the 3-2.
Yeah, the Pestermite is a pretty valuable resource. If it lives, then Cedric can potentially Splinter Twin it and combo off. And right now, AJ doesn't seem like he's too afraid of that because he's just casting a Lingering Souls. Or maybe it just means he doesn't have a Path to Exile. But Cedric will certainly read into that. If Cedric has a Splinter Twin, this would be a good chance for him to go for it.
Yeah, so it looks like AJ is just going to flash back a Lingering Souls. He did take 2 damage playing his Godless Shrine. Now, this was actually a really good turn for Cedric by tapping down the white mana. And it made AJ take 2 damage to be able to flash back his Lingering Souls, but he also had an Oblivion Sower in hand, which he would have been able to cast that turn had Cedric not tapped down a mana
And
source.
I see the Splinter Twin in his hand. Is he going to go for it?
I think you just have to.
I mean, this could be gain.
Yeah, I think you just have to go for the Splinter Twin if you have it.
Oh man, I hope he does it.
The Lingering Souls are going to be able to play defense for some time against the 2-1. He does have a Snapcaster Mage in hand, so he has the potential for a Snap Remand or Snap Lightning Bolt to try and tempo the game out.
Oh, Cedric is keeping us in suspense. He's playing it a bit more conservatively.
He did play a Desolate Lighthouse for his turn, which is going to allow him to loot a few times, try and filter his hand into getting a little bit more action. I could imagine he was possibly playing around something like Dismember, since he did have some mana available.
Yeah, so he probably feels like he's just favored in this scenario and he can take some time. He probably knows that it's a kind of a favorable matchup for him, and his opponent doesn't really have a lot of pressure. So Cedric really can sculpt the game the way he wants. He can wait until he has a little bit of counter backup, maybe a Dispel or something like that.
Let's see. So on AJ's turn, it looks like he did play a Bajuka Bog. He kind of pointed at Cedric's graveyard, but it doesn't look like it's been exiled yet, so I'm not quite sure if we have a trigger that was missed or if they're just being a little lazy.
Yeah, it might be that Cedric has a Snapcaster Mage and is thinking about responding, but it looks like he's just going to let the graveyard go. Also, a lot of times when something happens, players will just take a moment to think. Even if they have no response, they just kind of want to take a minute, assess the game state. Cedric's a really smart guy. I'm sure he's just kind of taking that opportunity to kind of think things through.
So it looks like AJ has another Lingering Souls in his hand, just going to prompt this attack with the 2 spirits. I imagine he's going to cast it, or he's going to go with the Oblivion Sower.
And we've got something big. Here's one of the big payouts that the Black-White Eldrazi is looking for. So this is going to exile some cards off the top of
4?
Cedric's library, yep. And then all the lands that are in exile, including the ones that got exiled previously with the Relic of Progenitus, are going to be able to get put into play on AJ's side. And this is just going to make his mana explode.
And they do enter the battlefield untapped, so it's pretty important to look at. Cedric does have Flooded Strands in his deck, which will allow AJ to fetch for Godless Shrines or Plains. But he also has an Urborg on the battlefield, so they can just tap for black mana.
Yeah, which is a really nice thing to note about Urborg in case you play against a deck that doesn't have fetches that you can actually use. So unfortunately, though, it looks like AJ only got 1 land off the whole thing, which is pretty surprising. Yeah,
there's just the earlier Strand. It looks like he's going to cash it in for a Plains here.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, he's got all the black mana in the world. White mana is pretty valuable. Probably doesn't want to draw lands at this point. Shuffling his library doesn't have any impact because there's nothing like Serum Visions. So it's kind of a freebie. His life total is not in danger. The super, super small percentage points that you get on not drawing a land by fetching are probably worth it for him.
Yeah, so this isn't all that bad for Cedric. At a relatively healthy life total of 14, it's not like he's going to die very soon. He does have some time to try and figure out how he's going to safely get a Splinter Twin on one of these creatures.
And it looks like he's going to tap down the plains, and now all he has to worry about is a Slaughter Pact. So essentially, if he has a Remand or a Dispel in his hand, he can just go for it. Although he may also start to feel like there's a bit more pressure building on the board, and he may want to go for it anyway, even if he thinks that his opponent has Slaughter Pact in his deck.
I agree. So Cedric with his draw looks like he just drew into another land. He does have that Splinter Twin in hand, so he can just go ahead and slam it on one of his creatures here and go for the win.
Yeah, let's see. I hope he does it. I want to see a ton of tokens on the board.
I do too, and that's not just because we can see that AJ's hand is that you can't interact with it. I just like going for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I like seeing those impressive finishes, and when you get a combo like that and you get to attack for 1,000,000 damage, that's the way you win a game.
Absolutely. And so just like that, Cedric went for the Splinter Twin combo on his creature. AJ did not have a response, and the game is over. So the black white Eldrazi deck definitely can try and press some advantage by getting an early Oblivion Soar or something like that on the battlefield. But the blue-red twin deck is able to, you can use Remand, stop something for a turn, get your creature on the battlefield, Deceiver Exarch, or a Pestermite, and then you just win with Splinter Twin.
Yeah, and that's one of the big strengths of Twin, is if they play against an opponent who doesn't have enough disruption, they can just steal the game. And for AJ's side, he didn't have an early Oblivion Sower. He got the Oblivion Sower, but it was kind of late. He really wants those explosive starts. That's the whole reason he's playing this deck. So hopefully he can get a bit more of an explosive draw in these sideboard games, or just have a lot more disruption, which I believe he has some of.
Yeah, so for sideboarding, let's go ahead and take a look at, from AJ's side, he does have 1 Crucible of Worlds, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Spellskite, 2 Disenchant, 2 Celestial Purge, 2 Leyline of Sanctity, and 2 Stony Silence. So Andrew, what do you think you do if you're in his spot?
So AJ has quite a few options. I think the 2 best options are Spellskite and Disenchant, and Celestial Purge, excuse me. Those cards, in particular the Spellskite, can make it really, really difficult for the Twin player to combo off. Now that said, the Spellskite is the thing that he can play proactively. Disenchant and Celestial Purge, he'll have to hold mana up for. And that can be a little tricky because Cedric is going to be using his Pestermite, Deceiver Exarch, tap down his opponent's white mana to see if the coast is clear. And AJ's white mana can get a little bottleneck. So I think Spellskite is going to be the key card that AJ is going to be looking to draw in this matchup.
And let's take a look at Cedric's sideboard here. We have 2 Rending Volley, 2 Vandal Blast, 2 Roast, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Jace, Architect of Thought, 1 Gut Shot, 1 Negate, 1 Anger of the Gods, 1 Izzet Staticaster, and 1 Kronos, God of Storms. How do you think we go here?
So one of the great things about the blue-red twin deck is that he can kind of decide how much he wants to be all in on the combo or not. So there's a lot of flexibility in this deck, and he can sort of fight back against a lot of what the black-white Eldrazi deck is doing. For example, he could bring in Blood Moon and just make all of those lands basic and make it a lot more difficult for AJ to get those explosive draws. If he goes that route, you may also see something like Jace and Kronos, just so he can kind of grind him out. Vandal Blast may also have some utility, just killing the artifacts. Negate can also be a decent one, just to help protect his combo. But a lot of this is going to depend on how much Cedric wants to rely on the combo to win the game, and how much he wants to just sort of control things, get some chip damage in, and sort of whittle AJ down.
Yeah, that's always the interesting aspect of playing and sideboarding with this blue-red twin deck, is you just kind of have to figure out how deep you can go on the Kronos and Jace, depending on how deep you think your opponent's going to go on cards to interact with you.
Yeah, and it really leads to kind of a game of chicken with your opponent, because they don't know what you're going to do, and you can just take advantage of that. I mean, Cedric could take out all of his combo pieces, and then AJ may be sitting there with Disenchants, Celestial Purges, and Spellskites in his hand that really just aren't doing anything. So that's one of the things that make the blue-red twin deck really, really good, is that laser flexibility. Just really good.
I think that kind of highlights the Modern format. And if you enjoy playing Modern, there's also a pretty big Modern tournament coming up here, which is our StarCityGames.com Regional Championships. Now, this is the exclusive playmat that you can get, Ascent of Aya, and you will get a free exclusive playmat and token for the first 200 players. So make sure you pre-register so that you can lock this in.
Yeah, I really, really like this playmat. Also, to note though, one of the big things about regional championships is the Star City points. Star City points are really hard to get. They are extremely valuable. I mean, I want them.
Well, yeah.
And they're just a lot harder to get this year, so you really want to take every opportunity you can get them. Also, this playmat, super sweet. I don't know how many of you guys out there know the really sweet illustrator, Alphonse Mucha, but this seems like it's done in his style, and he is one of the classic, grandfathers of Art Nouveau. So this is I think out of all the playmats, this is my favorite.
Absolutely. So if you want to figure out the locations for your StarCityGames.com regional championships, go to go.starcitygames.com/regionals. Season 1, February 6, 2016. If you're not playing in Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, which is this weekend, make sure you come out and play in these so you can get get one of those sweet playmats, win some cash, and get a buttload of Star City games or
yeah.
SCG points.
Yeah. So tell me, are you already pre-registered for regionals?
I actually am.
Oh man, you are ahead of the game. This man's got his priorities straight.
Yeah, well, I like playing Modern. I don't have a whole lot of chances to play competitive Magic in Seattle, in the Seattle area, outside of flying to events. So having one there is going to be sweet. Plus, my fiance is in love with the playmat, so she basically told me if you don't get me one of those, we're going to have a talk. So.
I think everyone's going to be in love with that playmat. It's really sweet.
It really is. So I'm excited for these sideboarding matches. I know that the Black-White Eldrazi deck, as we saw last weekend, was really highlighted in my eyes by the matchup against Grixis Control with Michael Majors, where Oblivion Sower just worked that match. So it doesn't quite have the same presence here because the Twin deck can just win with its Splinter Twin combo, but that card, when cast early, can just put so much pressure on the opponent. Yeah,
it's really, really good, and it's just a complete explosion. I mean, you play an Oblivion Sower, and you can just go straight into something even bigger. I mean, this deck plays Ulamog. It's a 10-mana spell, and you can go straight from your Oblivion Sower, which is 6 mana, into Ulamog on practically the next turn. I mean, it's really, really, really powerful when it gets to do its thing.
So it looks like AJ was on the play. Both players have kept their opening 7, and he was started off with an Urborg and an Inquisition of Kozilek. Cedric's revealed Island, Flooded Strand, Serum Visions, Remand. Is it Staticaster? I believe that's a Negate.
I believe it's a Negate also.
And an Electrolyze. Now, all of these cards do seem to be foreign, and I would be willing to guess that they belong to Jerry Thompson.
Ooh, maybe. Jerry Thompson, a great friend of Cedric, looking to help him out. Cedric doesn't get a chance to play as often these days, so I don't think he actually has his own collection.
Well, he's off to a good start here, winning the first game against AJ Lekan in his Black-White Eldrazi deck, and it looks like that Inquisition is going to snag a Remand out of Cedric's hand, hoping to free up a little tempo in the next couple of turns. It does look like he has a Spellskite in hand, so he's hoping to get that on the battlefield early and have it stick around.
Yeah, I think that's the real thing. I mean, Cedric's hand is a little land light, and taking a cantrip is going to be really good to help make it so Cedric doesn't find more lands, but most importantly, AJ just wants to land that Spellskite. That is probably the #1 best card against Blue-Red Twin, and clearing a path for that is really important to AJ, ensuring that he's not just going to get comboed out.
Absolutely. So we see Cedric here is going to lead on a Flooded Strand, crack for a Steam Vents into a Preordain. Now, he did have an island in his...
Wow, did he just leave both on top?
He did leave both on top.
Feeling good about that.
And that's what's interesting about this line of play, and Modern in particular, because of Preordain. He did have a basic island in his hand, and he's going to need more than 2 lands. So you would think that you would just use the island to cast the Preordain, but if in this situation where you're going to scry and leave 2 on top, he doesn't want to have to get rid of that second card by using a fetch land.
Yeah.
So you usually want to fetch first and then cast your Preordains.
Yeah, Cedric really shown that he knows what he's doing in the sense that he wants to make sure that if he wants to keep both cards with his scry, that he gets to keep both cards with his scry.
Now AJ is looking like he's in a bit of a trouble as he played a Relic on his second turn, missed his land drop, cracked his Relic, and has played an Expedition map. And is passing here still with only 1 land. Yeah,
for a deck that is really looking to have an explosion of mana on the opening turns, and that's really this deck's edge, is having a lot of mana on turn 3. AJ's a little behind on what he wants his game plan to see.
And to add insult to injury, it looks like Cedric remanded the Expedition map. So you don't see that happen very often.
Yeah. And
he's going to Exarch the...
Oh, Cedric is just being brutal. He's not letting this guy play anything.
Not at all.
What a big meanie.
Now, it does look like Cedric did bring in Is It Staticaster against the Lingering Souls, which I think is a great card.
Yeah, also, I know a lot of the Eldrazi cards create 0/1s, but I guess...
1/1 Scions.
1/1 Scions.
They got upgraded from the last time we were
Yeah, they did. So I'm not sure if he's worried about any of that. I know that this is kind of a newer deck, and it's probably unclear exactly what the deck list is in Cedric's mind, so he may just be trying to be prepared for anything. It also may be that he just took out a lot more of his Splinter Twin pieces and just wanted more fair stuff to bring in.
Yep. Now, it looks like we've got a Desolate Lighthouse was the play for Cedric with a pass. This is a very important card as it's going to allow him to filter through some of his cards that aren't going to do anything in the current game state and try and draw into that combo.
Desolate Lighthouse, I know Andrew Cunha is not a big fan of this card, but a lot of other people like it. And the big reason is that a lot of decks rely on card advantage to grind someone out. But one thing that's interesting about the Blue-Red Twin deck is with Desolate Lighthouse, they don't really get card advantage, but they really get good card selection. And so basically every extra land that they draw, they're going to be able to discard it and just get a fresh draw. It also really helps them just dig deeper into their deck.
Absolutely. So AJ was finally able to get a second land on the battlefield as a Ghost Quarter last turn. He did miss another land drop this turn, but he has been able to land a Spellskite. Potentially, Cedric is fetching in response, and it looks like we're going to see a Cryptic Command.
Wow, great for Cedric. So
I wonder if he bounces a land.
Ooh, that would be brutal. I mean...
No, he could just replay it.
Yeah. Well, that was really AJ's kind of big shot to get back into the game, and we'll see if he can cobble something together from this position now that that Spellskite has gotten countered. Even though AJ was behind, if that Spellskite had resolved, it would have bought him a lot of time. Cedric would have had a hard time dealing with that Spellskite.
Well, he was able to play a Plains and Path to Exile the Deceiver Exarch, which is a very good spot for AJ to be in, but he's just missed so many land drops, and he's just down so many resources at this point. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, the other thing with that, too, is it's just another land for Cedric. Cedric is at the point where he can actually start leveraging his mana against the big mana deck, which is something that you really don't see too often. So
we just see an island and pass from Cedric. AJ drew the best possible card he could when he stuck on mana, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and play a Expedition map that got countered by Negate.
Yeah, and that looks like it is the Negate from the sideboard. I don't believe that Cedric has one in the main deck, so that is one of the sideboard cards from Cedric's side that we've seen.
Yeah, I imagine bringing in the Negate, he's more than likely just still hinging on the combo and just wants to have extra cards to be able to protect his creatures from the limited removal that the Eldrazi deck has.
Yeah, and so with Cedric playing the Snapcaster Mage, it really looks like that he's on the grind out plan and just attack AJ with chip damage. It doesn't look like Cedric is going to be going for the combo this game. And again, this is one of the things that makes Blue-Red Twin such a good deck, is that flexibility. AJ brought in a Spellskite, and Cedric countered it, but he may not have even needed to. He might have just countered it because it was a blocker.
Yeah. So it looks like AJ has drawn a Disenchant for the turn. Like you thought that he would bring in correctly. He is popping his Relic of Progenitus to try and draw a card, and he did draw into a Slaughter Pact, so he does have some protection against the combo if Cedric has absolutely nothing. Yeah,
it seems like AJ is really well to deal with the combo, but he's facing the other side of Cedric's deck. Cedric just doesn't seem to be on the combo out plan. We haven't seen him draw a Splinter Twin, and we may never see him draw a Splinter Twin. That Disenchant just may not have a target.
Now, it looks like AJ, or it looks like Cedric Lighthouse, and he did discard his Izzet Staticaster. So AJ does have a Lingering Souls in his hand, and that if Cedric is on this beatdown plan, that Lingering Souls could put a little halt to it for a little bit. Now, Cedric does still have an Electrolyze in his hand, which is good against the first half of Lingering Souls, but it's not going to do much against the back half.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's an indication to us that he still is on the Splinter Twin plan.
So we've got a Pestermite tapping down a Plains in AJ's upkeep, which is going to get hit with a Path to Exile, which is again just going to put Cedric even further ahead than this battle of Blue-Red Twin against the big mana deck.
Yeah, and another thing to note about this is this is one of the advantages of having a two-color deck. You do have a lot of basics. I know from my experience when I'm playing Jund, I'll have 3 basics in my deck, and I think that's common for a lot of 3-color decks, is to just not have that many basics. And a lot of times if someone paths me twice, I can usually fetch 1 basic, but I may have already fetched the first 2 with fetch lands. So the fact that Cedric is going to be able to consistently get lands off the Path to Exiles is pretty good for him.
Playing all the basics also plays into the Blood Moons that he has in his sideboard,
for sure,
which are so good against the decks like Amulet that happened to win last weekend.
Yep.
So we see Cedric here just continuing to attack with his Snapcaster Mage. It does get hit with a Slaughter Pact from AJ. And now we see Big Daddy Kuranos.
Yeah, now AJ's really going to be hoping he has a Celestial Purge, because he needs an exile effect. That Kuranos is indestructible, and that's the only way that AJ's going to be able to get it off the board.
So Cedric has played a fair number of actual creatures this game, as we see here with a Splinter Twin on the, or with a Pestermite on the end step. Leads me to believe that he possibly could have just boarded out a bunch of his Splinter Twins and just kept the creatures, hoping to just attack AJ to death, along with some of his disruption holding down the fort.
Yeah, look at Cedric just playing the bait and switch on his opponent. Pretty rough. I mean, definitely a rough day to start the tournament.
Yeah, so AJ, it looks like he is drawing a little bit out of his mana troubles, but he is facing down a Chronos without a board presence. Cedric's going to go ahead and sacrifice his Scalding Tarn here and get a basic mountain, and he just has complete control of this game.
Yeah, despite all that, though, AJ's deck is capable of having some big comebacks. If he draws a Oblivion Sower and is able to cast it, that can be a ton of card advantage, a ton of mana, and we could see despite Cedric being so far ahead, we could see AJ just go Oblivion Sower, Ulamog, and be right back in the game.
Absolutely, because the Oblivion Sower, the ability is an on-cast trigger. So even if it does happen to get countered, he's still going to be able to exile 4 cards off Cedric's library, put all of the lands onto the battlefield that are currently exiled, and at that point it's going to allow him. Oh.
And we do see the Splinter Twin.
He just had it all.
Yeah, I mean, Cedric really, he was winning on multiple fronts, but I think a lot of that just came down to AJ having kind of a rough draw. He missed land drops. He didn't have all the action he wanted to. He had to use removal spells on maybe not the most important creatures, but he had to protect his life total. So I think AJ sort of played it the way he needed to play it, but the cards just kind of didn't line up for him.
Yeah, that's been a